Welcome back to track 3, and I think today it's okay to say good morning, even though it's 10 o'clock. Now it's all about negotiations. In a minute on stage will be Tanya Tarr from Cultivated Insights in the US. Part of this session is where you are also going to be involved. There's a little workshop of a kind. And Tanya, did you already give this one to everybody, or should they? There is a little paper that if you don't have this paper, please come up here and get one. Yeah. So Tanya, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So typically I have a little bit longer than 40 minutes, so this is going to be the express version, and I might have to talk pretty quickly, but I am extremely happy to be here and not entirely as jet-lagged as I was a couple days ago. I do live in Austin, Texas, and I'm here today to talk to you about negotiation, but we're going to approach it in a different way than you might have encountered previously. So I'm actually a behavioral scientist by trade. And I used to work with military families and in counterintelligence, and then spent a long time. I joined the circus, which is how I refer to United States politics, and I was there for 17 years, working for labor unions, so working for public employees and then school teachers in Texas. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been a business writer. I write a column for Forbes on negotiation and leadership. And I also work with corporations and help them develop their staff. And throughout my entire career, I've been trying to understand how people's values drive choices and behavior. So I'm not in radio. I have been on podcasts. I don't run one, but I am a journalist. So it's been wonderful to hear some of the incredible things that you are all doing globally to reach all sorts of audiences. And these are some of the folks that I've worked with, so there might be some familiar faces and some maybe not so much. But today we're going to talk about something called the DISC framework, which stands for Dominant, Influencing, Steady, and Conscientious. And so this is the handout that I've given you. It's a little guide and a summary of what we're going to be doing today. And I've been told by many folks that that little piece of paper has been very helpful for them. And then we're going to talk about how these different communication types talk to each other. And then we're going to do a collaborative negotiation where you're going to pair up with somebody. And I would suggest, even though this might not be great for introverts, to pair up with someone you don't know. And then we're going to do a practice round. And typically, too, I talk about the fact that in my personal life, I practice combat sports, Muay Thai, which is Thai kickboxing, and American boxing. And so the thing I've learned from practicing that relates to negotiation is that when you get excited or when you get anxious, it registers the same way on your body, okay? It registers as an adrenaline spike. And the difference between whether you're going to choke and get hit in the face or lose a negotiation versus be artful is simply the amount that you practice. And so this is why this workshop is designed the way it is. So it might make you feel a bit uncomfortable, but negotiators and good negotiators are not, it's not a natural trait. It's something that's actually quite trained. And in fact, in the military, we see the same thing, that the reason why the military, why soldiers in any branch are able to execute is because they train and train and train. It's absolutely the same with negotiation. So why are we going to pay attention to this goofy thing that this Texan is saying? I'm just glad I haven't dropped a y'all yet. Also, as a bit of an aside, can I just say to everyone in this room and everyone I've encountered here, I am just so deeply inspired by anyone that can give a business presentation in a second language, because I've sat on some of your panels and I'm just floored, because I think probably like 15 Americans could, give like a presentation in a separate language. So anyhow, I just want to say how much I admire all of you. But the reason why we're talking about and why I'm presenting to you this framework is because it's highly effective, not in person. This is not a personality test, okay? I'm a behavioral scientist. I don't believe in astrology, but I do believe in knowing how people communicate and how that can be effective to you if you're trying to persuade them about something. And so why this can be effective for you is it can deepen your collaboration and persuasion skills. The thing that drives me bananas is that people, when they find out I write about and study negotiation, they're always like, can you help me with my salary negotiation? Okay, yes, obviously this is the most important thing for a lot of people, but it's not the most interesting. And the reality is, wherever we are, at whatever stage in our career, there is so much interesting things we can do when we actually collaborate, when we're imaginative, right? We add things to the table. and that most of the time we're actually engaging, right? We're not just trying to get a dollar amount. So anyhow, the DISC helps you approach situations diagnostically, right? So it kind of can dissolve conflict sometimes too. And really this is about influence and practicing thinking on your feet. So that's why I'm going to make you talk to a stranger, or hopefully, I mean, you can talk to somebody you know, but I mean, if you really want to get the full benefit, I just encourage you, especially if there are any other kindred introverts, I'm very introverted, believe it or not, even though I stand here, to talk to somebody you don't know, because this is a great practice, right? Okay, so what is DISC? DISC is a communication framework that can help you persuade any key decision maker, right? So raise your hand if you've ever had to pitch an idea. About half the room. Okay, raise your idea if you've got a great idea you really wish you could see at work. Oh, come on, everyone should raise their hand. You all speak a second language, you're all brilliant. Who has a good idea they wish they could see at work happen, come to life? Indulge me, everyone raise your hand. Even if you're not aware of it. Yes, even you, I'm sure you have good ideas. I'm sure you have good ideas. And so this is how you change the nature of your work, right? It's not just that someone's telling you something to do, but that you're engaging with them, right? Especially in such a creative industry like radio and podcasting and audio. Okay, so DISC helps you collaborate and move in sync with your team towards a common goal. So I might say this 15 million times, hopefully only 3, but maybe 15 million. This is not a personality test. It is not a personality system. When we say these assessments or categorization systems are about personality, all of a sudden we get a very fixed mindset, right? And that's not the purpose. The purpose here is, how do I figure out what's most important to the person I'm talking to? And then how do I present them with information that makes it easy for them to say yes? And so this is a very old system that has been used for a while, and it's dominant, influencing, steady, and conscientious. And it is a compass, and again, as a behavioral scientist, I really like this system because it helps us look for observable external behaviors, right? How is a person acting? How are they interacting with you? What questions are they asking? And that tells you how better to position whatever it is you're trying to convince them of. Not a personality test. So there's 2 kind of questions you can ask to figure out what type of person you're talking to. The first is, are they task-focused or are they people-focused, right? Do they want to get the job done, or do they want to preserve relationships or build relationships? So as you can see on the left, if you're very task-focused and goal-oriented, and you don't care as much about people or relationships, then you might be a dominant type or a conscientious type. And if you're more people-focused, you want to build influence, you might be a more influencing type or a steady type, right? So dominant folks want to win, conscientious folks want to get it right and perfect. An influencing type, they want to understand how people are feeling. Press secretaries are fantastic influencers usually, right? And then steady types want to keep everyone together. They usually want to maintain tradition. So the second question you want to ask, are they externally focused or internally focused? And this is not introvert, extrovert, but this is more, how do they take action? So a dominant type is going to tell people what to do. An influencing type is going to ask people how they feel. A conscientious type is going to look at data and evidence, what is right and with precision, right? And then a steady type is going to think about, how do people interact? What happened the last time we had these people in the room? Or how do we do what's traditionally correct? Or how do we keep with the culture, right? So that's the 2 questions. Are they task-focused or people-focused? Are they externally focused or internally focused? And so very quickly, because unfortunately, is there some way I could get a clock too? Because I want to make sure I don't go over on time. But so these are some of the characteristics, right? So very quickly, dominant types, they're direct, they're firm, they're strong-willed, forceful, results-oriented. Conscientious type, analytical and reserved. Influencing type, outgoing and enthusiastic. And steady type, even-tempered, accommodating, patient. And we're going to go through each of these 4 types, right? So how do I win is the dominant type. This is the question, and you might see the question on the chart too, right? How do I win? This is the type I get the most questions about. Right? They are misunderstood as disruptive or a bully because they are often very impatient, right? So you observe them, they're in a hurry, they will interrupt you. If you're in conversation with someone and they interrupt you, chances are you're dealing with a dominant type. They might be confrontational. They often are, a key stakeholder. And this is why that people always ask, how do I deal with them? Because they don't, they seem sort of intimidating to a lot of folks, cross-culturally even. A sure tactic is actually show them how to get to their goal directly and get out of their way so they can say yes. If you're negotiating with a dominant type, it's fantastic. If they are talking to you on some level, they've already said yes. The surprising tactic, and I literally could give an entire hour-long lecture on this, I'm going to suggest this, but again, with a sort of star, right? So the surprising tactic with the dominant type is you want to challenge them, match their intensity, and interrupt them respectfully, especially if you have information that will help them win, right? Because that's all they're focused on. But a dominant type's great to negotiate with because if they're talking to you, they've already said yes. So your job is just to get out of the way and help them sign on the dotted line, right? Conscientious type. Is this accurate? Conscientious type, they might, again, get misunderstood as like rigid or robotic, but they are not. They're just very precise. They want to make sure it's accurate and it's usually fair. And so and again, some of these observations, they're a little bit, I wouldn't say stereotypical, but they're sort of guidelines, right? They're hints that you could look for, right? They're usually reserved in body language. They definitely avoid emotion. You will never win over a conscientious communication style type with emotion. It will always be with data, right? What are the numbers? How many downloads? You know, that kind of stuff. And then they might avoid eye contact, you know, but again, because they're very sort of internally, they're thinking a lot, right? So the sure tactic with a conscientious type is use linear logic. Step 1 to step 2 to step 3, and ask what would increase fairness or accuracy in the situation. The most surprising tactic, I think, is to ask them to anticipate that they are going to try and poke holes in your argument, and then just to embrace it and say, what missing data would they like to see? What else should I, get in terms of evidence to make sure that you can say yes, right? What else should we be analyzing? The next type is influencing. So how would others see this? Influencing, so not to make broad generalizations, but the dominant type might be the CEO, right? The conscientious type might be the data analyst or whoever is looking at analytics. And then the influencing type might be your on-air talent, right? They are exciting and they are shiny and they are wonderful and they draw the audience in. They might be misunderstood as a bit scattered and distracted sometimes, but not always. And they move very fast, like a dominant type. So they're very expressive, they're talkative, they're charismatic, they might be bored by details. And so the sure tactic, though, is to ask what their opinion is, how do the options you're presenting make them feel, who else should we be thinking about, right? Because they're thinking about how is this going to land with other audience members. And then a surprising tactic is, what's exciting, right? What's exciting to the influencing type? What are you excited about? And if they respond to that, I'm dealing with an influencing type. And then sometimes, too, if they seem, because they're very nonlinear. Conscientious type is very linear. Influencing type is very nonlinear. And so when you're trying to get a decision from a nonlinear type person, you kind of want to ask them, give a little bit of time, a deadline, what are you focused on? What's going to help you move this decision forward, right? And then steady type, which is one of my favorite types because they are very difficult to negotiate with. Why? Why are they difficult to negotiate with? Because they're great listeners. And I find I'm more successful in a negotiation because I'm a conscientious type. Let me just self-disclose. I'm a conscientious type. I'm a data person. A steady type doesn't disclose. I like in a negotiation to get as much information from my counterpart, and the steady type's just going to be there nodding, lots of eye contact, very understanding, draw you out, right? And they're great listeners, and they're wonderful to work for, and they're wonderful to work with. But if you're trying to negotiate with them, they can be a bit tricky. So definitely ask what their opinion is on maintaining balance and stability. They tend to be very long-term thinkers, whereas dominant type and influencing type are more short-term. But I think steady and conscientious, they're very more long-term, more thoughtful in a way. And then the surprising tactic is ask them how they would like to be supported, or what could you do to help them out. A lot of the times they're supporting others, and so flipping the script on them and asking them what they might need can be helpful. Right? And also I put there, too, these misunderstandings, right? So they could be seen as sort of stagnant and overly cautious, but it's because they're thinking about a lot of people, right? And they're trying to keep everyone together. So, again, these are all sort of hacks, I guess. They're tips and tactics. Compatibility is right next to you. And before I go into this, part of the exercise we're about to do is you're going to attempt to people read. And I know I've only given you this much information, but you know what I said about adrenaline, right? The only way you get good at this is to just start doing it. So don't be afraid of whether or not you're going to get it right or not. Just make a guess. So I'm going to talk about some of the aspects. Because, again, This whole system is useful not for self-reflection. It's good to know what your type is, but this is most effective when it's done externally. And since there's only 4 types, it's very cognitively easy for people to pick up usually. But anyhow, something to think about is if it's easy for you to negotiate with someone or collaborate with someone, they might be highly compatible because this is what compatibility looks like, right? Why do these types, why are they compatible? They're lining up on one of those axes, right? So a dominant and influencing type, they like to move fast, make decisions fast. They want to move and do stuff externally. So it feels, if you're one of these types, it's going to feel easy to work with another type because you have that similar momentum. A dominant type and a conscientious type are similar because they want everything to be correct and they want to hit the goal. The problem is that dominant and influencing moves really fast, but that's not always strategically advantageous. Right, and a dominant and conscientious type, they might want to win, but again, that might not be always advantageous. Depends on the context, right? And then conscientious and steady, they tend to work well together because they're very internally focused and very thoughtful in the same types of ways. And then influencing steady are very good because they're both people-focused. But for every situation, every context, this may or may not provide strategic value, right? And so that is for you to sort of make an assessment as a negotiator. Let's also talk about challenge and friction. This is fun, sort of fun. Thank you for laughing. I was telling some of your colleagues, no, I'm serious, I was telling some of your colleagues, like, I really have to have a focus group of Nordic people because sometimes when I crack jokes, it's just like hitting a wall and I'm trying, I need to be culturally sensitive here. Okay, so friction happens on the diagonal. Can anyone tell me why they think this happens? Exactly. You communicate in wildly different ways, right? So at the beginning, there can be this friction. On the other side, if you can find ways to work with someone who's diagonally, placed from you, you're like a rock star. You'll be like dynamite because now you've got coverage of all those different types, right? But at first, sometimes it can be tricky. So dominant and steady type, they're kind of butting heads, and influencing and conscientious, they can sort of butt heads too. And by the way, I have really nice summary notes that I can email you. So if you would like a copy of this, please, let's talk afterwards and I'll give you my card. Or you can find me on the app. So how does this help with collaboration and negotiation? So this is where we're going to get into the workshop piece of this, right? These are the collaborative questions by disc type that we've talked about, right? So dominant is going to want to answer to how do we win quickly? Influencing type, how will others react to this? Steady type, how do we stay consistent? And a conscientious type is what data do we need to see to make a decision, right? These are the questions that each type is going to ask if you're trying to get them to say yes to something, right? So stay focused on your goal. So what I want folks to do, either pull out a pen and paper or maybe a notes app on your phone. And we're just going to do this for a few minutes in a second here. But when you stay focused, how can I convince each type? What are the mutual wins and what is my backup plan, right? So this is the very basic 3 questions I always ask myself before I walk into any negotiation. But this is what we want to do. We want to practice being disc detectives. So the first step is think of a great idea that you want to pitch at work. And by the way, I have the sense that some of you are like quite senior. So maybe you're not pitching for someone above you to make the decision. Maybe you're pitching an idea to your staff, right? Or to a staff member who manages a team. But whatever it is, you have an idea for a project or something and you want others to do it. So think about how you would describe it. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, but just jot something down, jot a couple sentences down. And then think about what is your ask. Are you asking them for time? Are you asking them for people resources? What is the thing that you're asking for? Okay? And I'm going to grab my timer. 2 minutes, and then I'll tell you the second part of this. Also, can I tell you all a very quick story? I know you're writing down your ideas, but part of the reason why I teach this system is because it does work cross-culturally, but also because when I first was lecturing on this, I was at 3 different places. one with like 300 people, one with 500 people, one with 150 people. And they were mixed groups, but it's mostly high tech and so forth. And I was talking about disc and negotiation. And at each event, this happened over the course of 18 months, nobody knew each other from the other events. I get off the stage, and at each of these events, waiting for me at the end of the stage, is a middle-aged, white, bald guy. I have no idea how, they don't know each other, but it was the same type of guy. And I walk off the stage, and they have to tell me, and they basically say this to me in various ways. They're like, is it okay if I use a very stereotypical Texan accent? Will that hopefully make you can totally laugh at it too, by the way. Okay, so, because it all happened in Texas. And I walk off the stage, and these guys all said this to me. They said, when I heard you were going to talk about a personality test, I thought, this is bullshit, I'm going to leave. But I'm glad I stayed because I think you taught me something, and I think you helped me figure out a problem with my wife. Really, and the third time, and like I said, I'm a data person, right? So once might be an accident, twice might be a coincidence, 3 times you got a trend line. So I was like, this is it, DISC works. It works as a communication system because it helps even the most skeptical. So, thank you for laughing. I do, please let's connect, because I need to, online, you can be part of my Nordic focus group, so I don't, totally mess it up with other populations. But, yeah, 30 more seconds. Write down the thing you want to pitch at work. Remember that this is not about personality systems. This is about communication. What are you trying to communicate to someone that could help you bring your great idea to life at work? Okay, great. So, now, and actually, let me go back here a second. We are going to, as I'm describing things, you probably have a sense of what you are, right? What your type is, right? So I want everyone right now to think about where they might be in one of these 4 buckets, and then don't share it with anyone, but write it down or just know it or put it on your notes page. But just make an assessment right now. Do I want to get things done and move fast as a dominant type? Do I think about how other people feel and also want to move fast? Then I might be an influencing type. Do I want to keep the group together? Am I thinking about long-term decision making? That's a steady type. And then am I thinking about data and evidence first? And slightly introverted, and that's a conscientious type. So think about what type you are and write it down, okay? But do not share it with anyone, because this is a key part of the workshop we're about to do. All right, so this is what we're going to do here in a second. And we're going to have to do it. We only have about 10 minutes to do this, because I want to make sure we have time to talk a little bit too. But and we're going into a break after this, is my understanding. So if you want to hang out, I'm happy to be here until the top of the hour. But so what we're going to do in this is you're going to pair up with somebody, and in the first round, and decide who goes first and second. So in the first round, the first person pitches the second person. Now, the second person is going to ask questions of the first person. If you want to be nice, and I suggest everyone is nice in the first and second round, ask questions that might give a little hint as to the type of person they might be talking to. Rosie, would you be willing to do a demonstration with me? Real quick. Oh, come on. Oh. Don't be sick. Yeah, in front of people, but you're brilliant. Okay, sorry. I'm calling my friend on the spot here. So you're pitching your idea to somebody else, right? You're pitching your idea to somebody else, and then yeah, she'll get the mic. Yeah, it's right behind. Okay. Person A pitches to person B. Person B asks questions of person A. And person A will have a sense of what type person B might be. And so at the end of the 3 minutes, person A is going to write down what they think person B's type is, but you don't tell them. We're not going to reveal that until the end, okay? And then you switch roles in the second 3 minutes. And then person B pitches to person A. Person B thinks about, well, how is person A reacting to this? Person A, if you're being nice, ask questions that might reveal your type to the person pitching. And then at the end of 3 minutes, person B writes down who they think, what type, communication type they think person A is. Does that make sense? So we're going to demonstrate real quickly.
I didn't hear any of that.
Oh my goodness
No,
gracious.
it's fine.
Okay.
So
She's a comedian. Right, so you're pretend you're my boss. Yeah,
I
okay.
can do that, I
Yeah,
can do that.
absolutely. All right, Rosie, thank you so much for giving me just a few minutes. I wanted to tell you about this new program I wanted to launch for kids on our radio station.
That sounds amazing, and I've always got time for you, Tanya.
Oh, thank you.
It's okay.
Oh my goodness. So I was thinking I just need about probably 5,000 pounds to get
Yeah.
this program off the ground.
Okay.
And I was thinking we could do it next quarter. What do you think?
Can you tell me, how many staff maybe you're going to need?
Yeah, probably 2. Yeah, I'm going to need a producer and somebody else to help out.
Okay, and have you got a good idea about who you might want to choose?
I do, yeah. I can
Brilliant.
tell you later.
Okay, so when you're, and your end goal, is it going to be commercially viable or not?
I think it will because it's going to be geared towards children, and we've got some really great children's clothing lines that want to help be a part of it, and I've already sold a couple of ads. So does it work?
Brilliant. I love this idea.
Great.
Let's talk more.
Great. Okay, so what do we think Rosie's type is? Just shout it out. Influencing? Interesting. What else?
For me, steady.
Steady. Okay, who said steady? Why steady?
Because for me, she really thought about other people.
Yes, she did. That's right. But what else? There's something that differentiates. Say again? She agrees, and she's not challenging. That's right. But actually, she was asking about long term, right? Long term. Yeah. She comes across as an influencing type because look at this incredible personality here, you know? But you got to listen to what they're asking for, right? Right? So does that make sense? I just want to demonstrate it because I don't want to throw people in the deep end.
And actually, I think that's really interesting because all my life I've been a presenter, and so I think that's where my influencer thing comes. But actually, then later in my career, I was a manager, and I think that's where my steady thing comes from. So
Right.
I have done this a few times with Tanya. I did book her. So
Yeah. She's a plant. But does that make sense? So that's what we're going to do in the round, and it's going to be pretty quick. Right, and so the other thing I'm going to say before we go off and do this, and I'll hold time and I'll let you all know when 3 minutes has passed. But the other thing to think about is don't hesitate. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just blurt out the thing you're trying to ask for, right? That type of practice is super, super important. That improvisation, right? Do we have any questions? No. Oh. Fantastic. Thank you, Rosie, for modeling incredible behavior. Okay, everybody find a partner. And remember, don't reveal your types until the very end. All right, good job. Good job, everyone. For round one, good job, good job. Wind it down, wind it down. Okay, so write down, don't tell your counterpart, don't tell your partner. Write down what you think your partner's type is. Just take a moment, write it down, or put it in a notes pad. I'm serious, there's gonna be a big reveal. It's quite fun at the end. Write down what you think your counterpart's type is. Don't tell them, don't tell them. Don't tell them. I know I say this, I say don't tell them, and everyone's in the middle of telling the other person. No, we're gonna do that in a second. All right, so now we're going to have the other person pitch to the person that was just, or people that were just pitching. Yeah? Okay, so we're gonna do it in reverse, and we're gonna have 4 minutes, and then when the bell is up, then again, I'll have you write down what you think the other person's type is, and then we will reveal it then, but not now. Not now. This is a key part, right? So if you've been listening, now you're going to pitch to the other person, and we start now. everyone. There we go. That's the time. I hate to interrupt conversations, but that is the 4-minute mark. That is the 4-minute mark. If we could, all eyes up here, thank you. Okay, so this is the very exciting part. Very exciting part. And because we have, what do we have? We got 10 minutes left. Less than that, 10 minutes? Something like that? And again, I'm happy to, I'll be here if you want to talk afterwards or ask questions or whatever. I have my card. I'd love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn or Instagram or however. Not TikTok. I'm too old for TikTok. Okay, so what we're going to do now is the most interesting part, right? So we are, in a second, going to reveal to the other person what you think they are, and they're going to tell you what they think you are. And we're going to do it very quickly, and then need everybody to look up here again so that we can talk about what happened. This is the most interesting part of this entire workshop, right? Okay, so very quickly, tell your partner what type you think they are, and they will do the same. Okay. Okay, like I said, we need it to be fast. Is this on? I think it's on, right? Can you hear me? It's on? You can hear me? Okay, right. So, y'all, do you want me? All right, y'all, here I go. The Texan is coming out. I need everyone. I know these conversations are so good, and I absolutely hate to interrupt you. All eyes up here, though. If we could look at the top of the stage, please. If we could look at the stage. All right, so raise your hand if you got it right. If you gauged it right. Okay. Oh, pretty good. And then if you got it wrong, raise your hand. Oh, come on. It's okay. There's no judgment. No judgment. Okay, a few people. Interesting. All right, so what's interesting, right? And actually, you are all incredible overachievers, right? This is because, European superiority, I guess. I don't know. That's a terrible thing for me to say, particularly as an American. Anyway, usually about half the room gets it right and half the room gets it wrong. Yeah? And so why is that? Because it's not everyone can people read, right? It takes time to develop this skill, but also maybe it's obvious that you would get it right. You work with audiences all the time. You have to make some sort of judgment, right? But can you see how it's useful, right? You think about who am I talking to and what kind of questions and how can I give the right information to convince them. The other quick thing I'm going to say, and then I want to hear about how it all went, because this is the most interesting part, right, is if you are about to walk into a high-stakes negotiation, besides answering these questions, what are the mutual wins and what is my backup plan? I would suggest setting aside 8 minutes, and then for 2 minutes each, write down the type of way that you would present your argument for each type. Dominant, influencing, steady, and conscientious. And have that in your back pocket. Because then, Niels knows what I'm talking about, because then you're sitting there talking to the decision maker, and if you pitch the way you think they might communicate or make decisions, and it lays flat, or you encounter resistance, then you can immediately go to the next type of argument. Right? And then you can cycle, because it's only 4. It's actually quite fast. But if you do this, you're going to have a greater chance of persuading them successfully, right? Okay, so who wants to share about what happened? I'm going to come down with the microphone. I'm so excited because as a facilitator, I've been facilitating and speaking like this for almost 20 years now. Oh, you have one there too? Oh, okay. Yeah, please, come.
I think it's more question.
Okay, great.
My question is, if the types can be kind of mixed, because I think my partner is steady, but with some influencing elements.
Great, yeah.
What can you tell us briefly something about it, like about the possible mixture?
Yeah. So it's a continuum. Right? So there's another bit of a curveball. This would be like a 201 class, like this is 101 intro, but like a 201 next level is sometimes the person you're talking to, you need to know their type to get the yes, but sometimes that person you're talking to, let's say it's your boss, the person you're talking to has a boss. And so they might respond as their boss would respond because they have to take your idea to their boss. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, usually, not always, but usually, people are going to fall on one side or the other. They'll be next to each other, right? So you might have a DI, or in this case, you might have an IS, but you know that they're going to be people-focused, relationship-focused. So you want to pitch the idea that shows that it helps with relationship building, right? Very rarely, if ever, will you have someone that is a conscientious type and influencing type. That just doesn't happen. You won't have a steady type and a dominant type. That just doesn't happen, right? They're going to be next. Their type, if they're between types, will be next to each other. So they might be a dominant conscientious type. Oh gosh, dominant. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but or ones I avoid. But dominant conscientious types can be tricky because they have very clear opinions about stuff and they want to move fast, right? Whereas influencing steady type, they'll take a little bit longer making a decision, right? But the idea is, if they're between types, that's okay. But that's why, again, you want to prepare just a sentence, right? Just small preparation. But if they're this type, we're going to prepare that way, or this type that way. What do we pitch? What was exciting? What was interesting or surprising for you in this experiment? Yes.
I would say that I'm very data-driven person because of my job. I'm head of music and research, and I realized that it's very heavy to switch off to another argumentation if you always try to argue with data. It's very heavy to focus on other points in your argumentation.
Yeah, well, that also you pointed out a good place where you might consider a little bit of practice, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, like a stretch goal. Right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing too I want to mention, that's a lovely point, and I am the same too with you. For years I was a data analyst. I looked at millions of pieces of voting behavior and polling and stuff like that, and I just didn't have any patience for emotion. And then when I grew up a little bit and I realized we have to think about people, it really, and again, how this works in a leadership context is it helps you expand as a leader. So all of a sudden I became so much more persuasive because I thought about people's emotions and baked that into when I pitched things to people. So you might have a place where you usually hang out, but then you can find your version of being in those other quadrants, and it's going to make you much more persuasive. But again, using this and thinking about some of those diagnostic questions on the little piece of paper I gave y'all, it can give you a little window into the type of person that you're talking to. And just like dealing with an audience and cultivating an audience, you're doing the same thing, but the audience is one person, right? Are we out of time?
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's not more time.
No
But
worries.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. And that was really interesting. And I know now how to approach people with pitches. So good, thank you. So now there will be a coffee break until 11:10. And make sure to be back 11:10. There will be cybersecurity in media houses. So see you back in 20 minutes.